content shared in this podcast reflects personal experiences and spiritual perspectives. It isn't intended as medical, psychological, or professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to explore ideas with discernment and seek guidance from qualified professionals when needed. Welcome to Mystican Identity, where we discover the unity in every tradition. I'm your host, the Mystic. This is a space for seekers, mystics, and wanderers where stories of the soul and timeless truths from ancient paths come together. Let's journey inward and remember what we've always known. Well, greetings. This is the Mystic, and today I thought we'd go way back. Not way back, but at least back to the beginning for me, a new beginning. This would be one of the most pivotal moments that has been shaping my journey the last number of years. Now, there was other stuff that was leading up to it, so I guess earlier, smaller beginnings. That'd be about right. But this particular event that happened is where my particular journey took a very sharp turn. This was an event that launched everything that I've been focused on the last little while, and the reason for this podcast, and the reason for YouTube channel and YouTube shorts. It's an event that I will frequently come back to, hopefully not annoyingly so, and it's about when I was hospitalized, or when I'll refer to it as when I was in the hospital. And this is really important to me because even though, like I said, I've had smaller beginnings leading up to this, this was a very profound event that really changed my perspective of everything, including the journey of myself within. It's also, essentially, the reason why I go by the Mystic. Now, I didn't actually pick the Mystic because it sounded cool, although I will have to admit, I think there's a little bit of flair to it. Maybe. But the true reason is because at the hospital, with that journey, I had a mystical experience. Even leading up to that, I always believed in mystical experiences, and I still do to this day because I actually still continue to have them. I also believe that pretty much the teachings that we follow, that we now call religion, came from individuals who had mystical experiences. And they jotted down, whether it's journaling or whatever it is that they did, but they felt a compulsion to write down their mystical experiences that we've now converted into chapters, verses, books, versions, and all this other fare that I believe stemmed from mystical experience. And I'm just simply continuing the tradition in my own way. We got podcasting now. Could still write a book, but there's still all these different formats of just continuing that tradition of mystical experience being shared like so many others did through history. So, how did I end up in that hospital bed? Well, to boil it down really simply, it was not taking care of myself, not taking care of this fascinating machine that I get to navigate as almost like a spacesuit for this spiritual form. And I just didn't take care of it. I didn't really think too seriously about maintaining this body. I'd have to say that I probably took better care of my car, computer, house, a great many things that I made sure had regular maintenance, but didn't necessarily take care of this fantastic machine that I get to operate. I guess I carried along with that also this younger version of thinking I was invincible. And I let that just bleed a little too far into adulthood, I believe. Kind of this thinking that, I'll be fine. I'll bounce back. I'm good. Things like that. Now, leading up to the hospital, I had signs that were happening. Subtle at first, I would say, but I just kind of brushed them off. But they started kind of getting a little bit louder and a little bit more persistent. And during that time, that's when I started to pray to the divine to, get me out of this mess or help guide me with the things I was starting to struggle with. Here's the problem with that. There's actually no problem with prayer. The important part is that the divine can offer all the guidance it can give. It's up to the prayer to put that into action. And that's where I wasn't so great. See, even though I was getting some guidance from the divine, I was treating it more like a negotiation where, yeah, I could see your point, but I want to slowly, I really don't want to dive into that. It was negotiating. Because of the negotiating, time started to go on as it does. And instead of getting better, I started getting worse and worse and worse. And of course, that's when I really started to pray. That was when I got like the furrowed brow kind of prayer, really concentrating. When I really started to pray the praying out of that prayer, like really get down in there. This is serious time, right? But here's the thing, even with that ultimate serious praying that got really down deep inside, super focused, I still didn't listen 100%. The divine nudged me, gave suggestions, small ones, subtle ones, but I still negotiated. I still bargained. I was asking, basically, just step in and do it for me. And I wasn't willing to do the work myself. But eventually, the negotiating and everything led to that one particular night. And that was a night that everything just stopped working. My body gave up. It literally just gave up and collapsed. My wife, thank the divine, checked in on me just in time and realized that there was a problem, so she called an ambulance. The events that followed were, they were kind of quick, abrupt. I remember the stretcher coming in and the paramedics. And from that moment till I got to the hospital is when the mystical experience began. Now, what's really interesting about it is it wasn't like all of the regular fare that people will talk about, you know, the white light or a tunnel or the typical meeting with angels and things. Mine was a little bit different. Now, that's not to say that I'm negating other people's experiences. There's reasons why people have those type of visions and the way that mine happened. So for those who have the real near-death experience happen to them, what happens is in their experience, the best possible way for them to physically explain what they experienced is going to come to mind. And that's a very, very traditional kind of thing that happens with mystics. It's very important to realize that because a lot of the visions a lot of the allegories that we get in older traditions and older scriptures are mystical experiences that are being communicated with what visual, physical things that were at hand. For example, nowadays you could put cars, certain types of buildings, fireworks. There's a whole bunch of examples of things that we have now. Computers, cell phones, different types of technology that are great examples of mystical experience that we can use those examples to communicate the experiences, but 1,000 years ago, those were not available. So different ways of communicating the mystical experiences. If that makes any sense, and I hope it does. Getting back to the hospital, once I arrived, I pulled back into our plane, but then for about 9 days, I kept going back and forth into this mystical experience. And for those who are wondering, wow, they gave you really good stuff in the hospital. Maybe so, but these mystical experiences still continue to this day. In these mystical experiences, I did meet the divine. There was a meeting of sorts, very different from what a lot of people say, and that's fine. That's fine. God works in mysterious ways, right? So in my case, it was a little bit more tailored towards me. So in the hospital, I was there for, as I said, 9 days, and I'm grateful that I was, because during that time, due to the way that the world situation was, I wasn't allowed any visitors at the hospital. So other than the staff, it was 9 days of me being isolated completely alone. And this setting couldn't have been more perfect. Because if there was anything that I needed, was time to be alone. That being said, I do want to step out of this for a second and just take note of the fact that ever since this experience, I have a passion for recognizing and showing gratitude to anybody who is in the medical field. Anybody who has chosen the medical field is where they would like to be an expert. And when I say that for healthcare, I mean doctors, nurses, personal support workers, volunteers. This is a virtuous area to choose a career in my humble opinion. Reason being is because when I was in the hospital, I was not a wonderful patient. Let's say I was a little bit of a grumpy grump. Bratty, really bratty. When I look back, I'm ashamed of the way that I behaved because it was like a child in an adult body. Demanding, selfish, not appreciative of other people's efforts. But now that I'm out of the hospital, I have to really think about the experience of people in healthcare. These individuals who came to work all of those 9 days, they have their own life stuff going on outside, their own stresses, their own pressures, their own victories, their own defeats. I could go through lots of examples, but I'm sure we could all just look at examples of our life and just think, oh, if there was one less thing I could deal with, I would get rid of. Well, everybody has that. And so does this staff. And they all parked their personal stuff outside the building when they showed up to work. Then they had to deal with my garbage, dumping my life experience on them, being grumpy, being cranky. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I'm sure that they had more than one me that was grumpy, cranky, and that they had to deal with. Then, when they leave work, they get the opportunity to pick up their stuff again and continue along with that. So I'm certain that there are some people who go through days, weeks, where they just don't get a break. There's no peace. There's no calm. And to be able to do that every day and keep showing up and keep being that person of delight such that their patient can feel like all is well and get better, that is virtuous, in my opinion. So as a practice, to this day, whenever I meet somebody who I find out is in the healthcare field, I have to extend gratitude to them and thank them and let them know that what they've chosen to do is virtuous. I feel like that is one way of paying honor to the people who helped me get physically better. The other thing, too, is that because of their actions, they put something in me that inspired me to help others, too. To take the experience that I had and not just walk away and say, well, thank you, I'm just going to keep going on with my life, but to realize that this was an opportunity for me to help others with what I went through and what I continue to do. And I thought about a lot of things, like maybe I should volunteer at the hospital once I get better. Or maybe I should start donating to a certain cause. And actually, all of these things I've followed through with. But the one thing that just kept going through my mind is that this was the format that I should choose to help others. And that was by doing a podcast, by doing a YouTube channel, Instagram, and share it with others in an effort to help people who require help, who maybe are on a path very similar and they could use somebody who's helping them along the way. So as I look back at the hospital, it was day 3 that was a real turning point for me. I remember it's the one that everything became very serious. As I said, I was a little bit of a grumpy grump, and I remember in my head that I was told I would be able to leave on the 3rd day. Well, the 3rd day came, and I was very insistent that I wanted to go home. It's day 3, send me home. I've done enough. I've done enough. That's so funny on different levels, now that I think about it. And the staff were really patient with me through the day, but then as I became more insistent on the fact that I wanted to go home, you can't keep me here, etc. Finally, the nurse that was attending to me just had to get down to the truth. And when she said this, it locked it in for me. She said, "You don't understand. Your body completely shut down. Nothing's working on its own anymore. The machines that you have here, they're keeping you alive. If we unhook you, you won't make it." That hit me like a boulder to the chest. I remember the whole world started to spin. Words didn't really make sense at that point. I heard the nurse continue talking, but to me it was more like Charlie Brown's teacher, where it was womp 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 kind of a thing. My mind focused on one thing only, and I remember that with the spinning of everything and with the womp womp womp, the only thing that my brain kept saying was, "You've run out of options. You've run out of options. You've run out of options." Man, that hit me hard. Real hard. Because I all of a sudden realized that I had negotiated with my life the whole time. I always found a way to wiggle out of trouble. I always had a way to negotiate. I always had a way to make excuses. Not this time. Whatever card that I would want to look through to play, there weren't anymore. I had nothing left to work with. Things just got real. In a little bit, the nurse left me, and I was by myself. And I guess I went into a meditative state at that point, because I do remember a little back and forth with the divine. And that's when this voice came to me, and it said, "Here's the thing. You can bounce back. We can work with what you got. It's just this time, you must listen and you must act." And that's where, referring back to the beginning of this, that's the point where I understood what I had really been doing wrong. That prayer is not enough. It's the opening. It's great. Fantastic. It's the means of communication. But like every type of communication, it requires action. It's a dance, essentially. It's a relationship. That's how, a relationship, a dialogue. There's a verse that I've known my entire life. It was at this point that the verse took on a different meaning to me. And the verse says, "If you abide in me and I abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be given unto you." Now here's the thing. I'd always read this as, I guess, a one-way street. If I abide in you, and you abide in me, then you shall da-da-da. So I'm just going to ask for stuff, and the divine will provide it. And now I see differently what that means. Because to abide in you and you abide in me means that there's a mutual understanding. There's a relationship. There's a back and forth. So essentially, when it comes to that part of the verse that's about the ask what you will, what it's saying to me is that I will ask things that are in alignment with the relationship. I will know what to ask because knowing what to be asked is what is known. But what is also known is that what is required, I will put into action. And I feel like I'm going to do a podcast on that one isolated because I will really branch out on that one. But to sum it up, I realized that it's not asking and receiving like some kind of divine vending machine. It's about alignment, yeah, which I've said a few times. It's about alignment. It's about becoming the answer through the action. Everything that has an inside has an outside. Every outside has an inside. Every prayer is an asking. Every prayer has a response. And every response calls for movement. And like I said, somewhere along in here is that my stay at the hospital was for about 9 days. When I came home, that's when the journey switched up in a really groovy way as to what we receive as writings about angels or messengers from the divine or God in different scriptures from different traditions. Because I had an angel help me with my recovery. As well as that, doors started to open for me. Up till now, I had always thought that when people said, "Oh, doors open for me," it always felt like it had to do with something financial or a job or a move to another city or something like that. In this case, the doors that opened were suggestions for study material. And it was so cool, so groovy. It started with one book. And this one book, as I started to read it, made mention of another item which I had to look up, which was another book. And as I read that book, it made mention of things that made me look at another book. And the journey started to continue. So the doors that opened for me were study materials that all I had to do was pursue. It's actually humorous to me because now I have so much reading material alone, just books, that I'm fairly convinced that I've got enough reading material for the rest of my existence on this plane, so I have nothing to want for in that regard. And the best part is that other ones creep out, other different resources, so I'll never be bored, is what I guess I'm saying. But what I'm going to mention is this next book is the one that really started to define for me everything that I had heard growing up. And it was like everything I grew up with were puzzle pieces, and this book started to put them all together. But that, my fellow seekers, is a story for another day. Well, thank you for spending time with me today. If something here sparked reflection or reminded you of a deeper thread running through it all, then this space has done its job. My fellow seekers, as always, I wish you and your loved ones all the best. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay connected to the mystery.